we have been buzzing with excitement about Striketober, this wave of worker militancy that we haven't seen in this country in a long time. John Deere workers, Kellogg's workers, hospital workers, carpenters, all kinds of workers are striking. And one would expect that in social circles of leftists, people who watch the Jacobin show, we would see this as a positive development, of course. But a more important question is, how does the rest of the general public feel about these strikes? Well, we do have some good news about this. The Huffington Post reported on polling done by the AFL-CIO, the main labor federation in this country, saying the AFL-CIO Labor Federation commissioned the progressive pollster Data for Progress to take the public's temperature on the strikes that have made headlines this summer and fall. The online survey of nearly 1,300 likely voters asked if they, quote, approve or disapprove of employees going on strike in support of better wages, benefits, and working conditions. 74% of respondents either strongly approved or somewhat approved of the strikes, while just 20% strongly disapproved or somewhat disapproved of them. 6% did not have an opinion. And what's doubly encouraging about this is that it seems like the support for workers is crossing partisan identities. The article goes on to say, not surprisingly, the backing of strikers was strongest among Democrats, 87% of whom approved of the walkouts. But support was still robust among independents and even Republicans, with 72% and 60% approval, respectively. The backing also crossed age groups, although respondents under 45 were more likely to voice strong approval than those above 45. Respondents who identified as Black overwhelmingly said they supported the strikes, with 85% approval, compared to 70% of respondents who identified as white. And this news is not just nice to hear, it's actually critically important for the success of these strikes. The employer class relies on divide and conquer tactics, not just among workers in a given workplace, but among workers throughout society. As union density has plummeted, it has become easier to pit non-union workers against unionized ones. A group of workers could be really militant and strike, but if the general public is set against them, it becomes harder and harder to maintain the effectiveness of the strike. Building and maintaining broad public support for strikes should be a primary concern for socialists. So one reason is the basic fact that having strong community support helps striking workers win, but also because ultimately we want class-based fights to spill over and influence as much as the working class as possible. We want as many working people as possible to be paying attention to strike action and hopefully be inspired by it. We want more people to learn the specific lessons, like which side the police are ultimately on, or how the state intervenes on the side of the bosses. So it's great that right now there is high public support for this mini strike wave that we're seeing. But unions and supporters of unions need to think hard about how to mobilize this support consistently in an organized way. And unions have a rich history of doing just this. And one example from the past are what was called the women's auxiliary groups that were attached to many unions. And they were often made up of the wives of male union members. Now, this was, of course, reflective of an age with a much more strict gender division of labor. And today we would not want to recreate this in the same way. But they were very effective organs for turning workplace struggles into community struggles. In the Great Flint sit-down strike initiated by the United Auto Workers at GM in 1937, the Women's Auxiliary played a crucial role in carrying that strike to victory. Let's listen to some of these women.
We made up our minds that we were going to be as big a part of it as the men. And we were, believe me.
A few of the women started coming up with their husbands. A few of the factory girls decided that their jobs were at stake also, and they in turn would bring other women around. We were very optimistic.
They needed protection, I thought. I was on the outside, I could do better there. We had to do something to help them to win this doggone strike.
I was working down here in the kitchen, and some guy from the hall come in and wanted to know who'd volunteer to take food to the strikers, and I said, I will. So this boy here took the first food over there. Had a big old milk can of coffee and another full of soup. The police up on top of the hill said, well, you don't want to go down there, lady. There's a lot of tear gas down there. I said, I've smelled that before. That don't bother me.
For some of the ladies, they would, call us all kinds of things. Why don't you go and take care of your family? What are you doing out on the street here? But we had a lot of the ladies walk off the sidewalk, join us. They thought we was doing a great thing.
Just a little tear gas, don't worry about it. These groups often became institutionalized and a consistent part of the union structure. So unions today can organize the family of union members, of course not just women, as a consistent body of support. This would also create a greater sense of ownership and buy-in among workers with regard to their unions. It could also inspire future union activists. Imagine if a child grows up as part of the union family, I'd bet there's a higher chance that they'll want to be involved with unions in the future. More unions also need to frame their fights as being for the benefit of all workers, not just their own members. This approach is called bargaining for the common good, where unions include demands that affect the broader communities in which they work, and in the process grow their base of support among people and organizations not affiliated with the union. There have been many examples of this, but perhaps one of the best recent examples was during the 2019 Los Angeles teachers' strike, where throughout the strike, public school parents and students remained strongly supportive of the teachers despite the inconvenience it caused them.
We are the teachers! We are the teachers! The mighty, mighty teachers! The mighty, mighty!
I did not have school today. It's important because if we don't go to school, the district doesn't get paid. And if it doesn't get paid, well, basically, it's like how they're feeling, like they're gonna feel like the teachers, basically, because they're not paying enough. So when she said we're gonna protest, she's like, if the sooner we start marching, the sooner the teachers are gonna get paid. She sort of convinced me with those words. There's too many kids in my class. Like, there's about 30 of them, and I think we should at least split the kids up into different classes.
I'm gonna check everybody in here at 7:30. You're welcome to come in and out here so you can stay dry, and then there's chairs for you to sit, and then there should be water and cookies. Okay.
And I'm just here just to do the same thing as my mom. Today it feels like a great day. It's raining, it's really not that cold, and it's really just good to see all these people marching.
Now, admittedly, this is easier for public sector workers to do. As a teacher, I can say that fighting for small class sizes not only helps me as a teacher, but is also better for my students. A sanitation worker or a public transit operator can argue that more funding not only increases their pay, but will fund better services for citizens. But this is also possible in the private sector. One great example is the 1997 UPS strike, arguably one of the most successful national private sector strikes in the last 25 years. Their slogan was, "Part-time America won't work," and they framed their strike as part of a larger fight back against more precarious jobs for all Americans.
I have a 15-month-old son at home, and I want a full-time job and full-time wages and a full-time pension so I can spend some time teaching my son my values. This strike is for him and for American families everywhere, and I'm willing to sacrifice everything I have, and as long as it takes, to make sure that Americans know we cannot have a part-time America anymore.
Now, I'm looking forward to retiring soon, after 33 years with this company. So the company's proposal to take over my pension plan scares me.
Half a job is not enough! Half a job is not enough! Half a job is not enough!
My minor strike is for my future, for my son and my family. That's why I'm here. I want a better job, a full-time job, something that he can look forward to.
And the fact that these pilots and these auto workers and other people have come together, just plain ordinary people, to stand here sends a message about what kind of America do we want in the next century.
So these are some things unions can do to gain more public support. But if you're not in a union, there are also many things you can do to support the strikes going on now and in the future. We're in a moment where there are so many left-leaning young people out there who support unions in theory, but don't have direct experience with them yet. Even just organizing a small group of friends to show up to a picket line means a lot to the workers who are out there on strike. The labor organizer and writer Jane McAlevey recently spoke with Teen Vogue about ways to do strike support, saying, visiting a picket line also allows the community to get more details on what workers need and how allies can provide support. Do they need bottled water to keep marching in the summer heat? Maybe some hand warmers for a wintertime strike? Could they use snacks, portable phone chargers? It can make a huge difference to have those needs met. Plus, getting involved is a great way to meet members of your own community with whom you might not otherwise interact. Remember, workers don't exist in a silo. They're just as much a part of our communities as anyone else. And joining a picket line could be the first step to strengthening those bonds. Being an organization can help to support strikes in a more coordinated way. For example, many DSA chapters across the country have turned their infrastructure towards supporting strikes. I'm going to take a second to brag about my DSA chapter in Philadelphia, which created the I'll Be There pledge to get people to sign up to support possible upcoming strikes. We use this list of people to mobilize whenever labor actions pop up. So doing strike support isn't just about feeling good. Sometimes it can literally be the difference between a strike that's successful and one that's not. It gives you a chance to meet working people where they're at and establish important political relationships. There is no greater political education than participating in a strike, even as a supporter. And so as Striketober hopefully rolls on, the left needs to focus on maintaining high levels of public approval so we don't let this opportunity pass us by. And Anna, my first start politically was actually supporting a strike as a freshman in college. And that experience literally changed my life. I knew what unions were. Some people in my family were in them. I started reading a lot about, political theory. I think once you start reading like that, the question always becomes like, what the hell do we do about this terrible world? And that strike really provided me an answer. And the workers won. There was great community support. And from that moment on, that kind of convinced me like the labor movement is one powerful way we can actually fight back as working people and win. I think getting involved in strike support it's not just about helping them win in the moment, but I think it's important for developing people in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the best example in your segment was the kids who got involved, right? Because they see firsthand, first of all, like how fulfilling being part of that can be, but also the importance of union power, the importance of knowing that you can really change the system, like that the power dynamic can change if you organize, get together, and demand that it changes. But what I really appreciated about that UPS video, the strike that the UPS did, was just like the argument that the woman was making that just has broad appeal, right? Learning how to frame things in a way that gets pretty much everyone on your side, with the exception of the employers, right? So she talked about, I want more time with my children to teach them my values. That's something that resonates with so many people across the country, whether they're unionized or not. So I totally agree with you in regard to the messaging for mobilizing people and getting as many people involved as possible to not only help win, but to kind of like build the labor movement on top of that.
Yeah. And it's really important because, and it shouldn't be this way, but the reality is many working people see unions as like a special interest group, a club that they're not a part of. And part of that is propaganda. But I think to overcome that, you got to be able to craft arguments about, no, this is actually good for you. We're fighting for you too, even though you're not in the union right now.
If you enjoyed this video from Jacobin Weekends, please hit like and subscribe. That way, you'll enjoy all of our backlog, as well as all of our future content, including interviews, live streams, and clips. Thank you.